This is a 1185 Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Blog sponsor to share more Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Please not leave directly. Very greatly appreciated. Today we're doing a simple computer test. See Ches to your dollar. Ches. Kichas basar. In terms of buying meat. Kas v'atur v'abisesis siman. You can't buy meat from any just from any butcher who shechts and sells unless he has a presumption of kashrus. Sign sham. Rambam periches machos din zayin so per mishchita in sham. If he doesn't check himself, in other words, the butcher buys from shechtim or is a middleman. Money Rabbeinu Ramah Sifro Darchi Moshe Siman Av Osu Base. Everybody's belief. He's a Mechel Mashgam Das Ramam Tavas Kain. I have to say the Ramam also held that way. The Avogad Bakan Sov Siman Yudalef because of Stam Nechim Bosam Mishul Sabakashus. He writes just plainly that you don't, without any elaboration, I guess, that you don't buy meat unless somebody has a presumption of kashrus. It sounds like even if he doesn't check himself, he needs a presumption of kashrus. Rama perhaps is a line that which he wrote previously in the 8th parak. Because it's difficult to say that the Gemara wrote this only according to the Torah. Because here Pascal Rama. So for the Rama and the other according to Rama, you only can purchase somebody who has a cheskas kashrus. So Shem Kain, you should pass that way there as well. That was Simon Aleph, seafood test, and he stopped Tapakum. That's Rama over there. We were previously says or unsure about the Rama's opinion in this matter. Because of Shitas, there are Gdoli wrote simply the Rambam. Going around, no matter why, you can only purchase somebody who is muksar b'kashrus, regardless of the origin of the meat. That is what the Torah you could steal. There we wrote a good logic to distinguish between meat and other things. The meat, the only issue is when he shechts and sells on himself, the same person. Test. The came to the dash the test of Tumashanoch Enis of Basli Kach Mikol Adam. The going to Turn says no prohibition of buying meat from anybody. And can't show him unless he slaughters and sells himself. Push custom and four to subsidy Simon Samachay. Hey, that's come fresh Shulchan, all them fresh most way. Like Ben Ramah Gama Ram Sobilcane, Queen Ramah, the Rambam also is away, but the low year, but sub Simon Samachay, Libra Machaber. But since he didn't make any, didn't take issue at the end of Simon Samachay on the Machaber Holy Kaimo, this is what we can hold. Much because Steve Iron Chum. The other things, it's ironic because by meat he's saying you don't need a cheskas kashrus. By other things, you should be chayshish for the Rambam and require a cheskas kashrus. That's the widespread custom. All the diasporas of Israel. Maybe so when a person brings something, a person we don't recognize whether he's Muslim kashrus or not. If he brings wine or cheese or butter or Pesach flour or dry kishka or smoked meat, etc., he brings a ksav hechsher. He brings a certificate attesting to the kashrus from a Rav who is has official position. Especially in our day and age when there's widespread breaches in the fence and widespread apostasy or heresy. Also, below ksav hechsher. You're not allowed to buy from anybody unless they have a written hechsher. By me, we say you don't need it. Nevertheless, nevertheless. Nowadays, even by meat, it's also to purchase something without a hechsher. There's no reliability. He wrote about in Aleph Yud Aleph, which was, I don't know if I have that here quickly. No, this is kind of base. So the does not apply. She was not say Rabbi Mador Paros because now because of her great sins, this generation is one or more breaches Can kol shiras Hashem no gabel libo there for anybody who's God fearing. Lo yachal shumon kerkashot, so when eat fat or kishka ubas and mushin or smoked meat below ksav hechsher. I guess he's talking about preserved meat because freshly slaughtered meat would be slaughtered in the town, and therefore you would know the shaykhid was the Rav had given a consent for the shaykhid to shecht and was taking out Christ was kashus. But if meat comes from a distance, and in the old day and age, you didn't get fresh meat from a distance. You only got preserved meat, such as the fat and the kishka and the smoked meat. So then you need a hechsher. And should not deviate from this. Same thing, like by wine, cheese, and milk and cheese. The ikadin came das Rama ben Rama because that is primary halacha according to Rama and Rama. By other things, and therefore, assumedly, we should extrapolate to meat as well. Now, they age. That's the Rama. I have a great question for the Rama. Some of you suspect on Bechor, in other words, to not require a mum in the Bechor before slaughtering, selling, or using it, etc. You can't even buy for him meat of venison, deer meat, because it's gather. He's not careful in Bechor, therefore don't even buy for him meat where there's no Bechor. Floros, not even hides. Somebody who's suspect on Shemitah. Pishton can't be buy for him in linen, even though there's no chashash of Shemitah. Somebody who sells truma as if it's chulin. Can't take him buy for him even water and salt. Obviously, no chashash of truma chulin. Well, it seems to this that somebody's not chashud, even though it doesn't have a cheskas kashrus. You can't purchase. Not like the Ram. Ram holds everything that requires cheskas kashrus, except possibly meat. But here it says that it's the chashud who's the problem, not a person who's not chashud. Let me share you'll do a muksa b'kashrus. Doesn't have to be have a presumption of kashrus about him. These are the main muksa b'kashrus tafka. If you're going to say a person must have a presumption of kashrus, marry a chashud. Why only specifically a person who's suspect? Even if somebody's not suspect, you shouldn't buy from him. But it's possible to say in this. The hard and non chashud, that which it says that here we're talking about a person who's suspect having a knas. The person who's suspect, that's what we sock it to him. We find him. We don't buy from him even things where the chashash is not applicable. The chashud concealing apim is basar tzvi. But somebody who's suspect, we find him that we can't buy from him. Don't even allowed to sell. We don't buy from him. Deer meat, venison, oros, and hides, and mayim melch, and water and salt. I would double sheish lechushbo. Something where there's a question, a suspicion. You shouldn't buy even with somebody who's not suspect. Actually, without a choshu muksa v'kashrus, until you find definitively that he has a presumption of kashrus. Come on, but later on there it says a choshu al shvius ain't choshu meiser. Somebody who's suspect on Shemitah is not necessarily suspect on meiser. Ish kazeshu choshu davar echad. Oh, so come on, it says Arukh HaShulchan. So I mean, this is suspect of one thing. Faday the rachok with the closer muksa kashrus. It's very difficult to call him somebody who has a presumption of kashrus. Because I'm you're allowed to buy him something from which is not suspect. But we can also say about this, the Mishnah is not talking about sale. So in terms of eating by him. To buy from him you can't, because even even might be shvach by him. But to eat by him, perhaps you can, because he's kashrus in his house. Could he be a Rama? No, okay, but it doesn't sound that way. The Mishnah Zu Maya Kai Mishnah is a kombat right here because this Mishnah follows on the previous Mishnah, which Mishnah is talking about sales. The bracket says here, Miyani al Shafsi Kanav Shisha Rama Miyusham Beberches Shvis, Shamasham Ram Marabiosi, Lomrel Kshen Yodu Choshim Lo, the Kule, where it says, it's down in the Shach asks from that Yusham, it says, it's only said this way, we don't know if it's Choshim or not, but Stam, I guess we assume the person even doesn't have Chesed, so, no, but a person, otherwise, even if a person doesn't have a cheskas kashrus, he's okay. It's not typical. It's a special cooler there by fragrant oil. I did not ask, find these explicit mishnayos. It seems only a chashuv problem. It's orchim. Rav. Bachul is that the answer is the zeshkus. I'm the shul chodal shol daber echad. Rachok. when she said that, well, if somebody's question on something, it's very hard to say, go on Muslim kashrus. And come on, share looking me Rabbi Chossi Tzadik. I was, sorry, I skipped. The Rachel because Muslim kashrus educates. Not true. The Zesh goes around Muslim kashrus, that the Rambam calls Muslim kashrus, which until now we were holding, we might have assumed somebody who's a tzaddik in B'yirei Shamayim and B'Rabim. No, Ain't a kabbalah sheva looking at Rabbi and Chassid B'Tzadik. Doesn't mean that he is a superior to your Shemayim or Chassid B'Tzadik. El Koshim is not going to be Dasi Tzroel. Anybody who conducts himself according to the Jewish religion, meaning a talis with tefillin, he puts on talis with tefillin, he's faush, he davens 3 times a day. Nothing else but he washes for he eats him manikas when they base him a kashrus. That's Torah Seder Kedosha, and he conducts his members of his household according to the kosher ways of our holy Torah. Then he crumbles some kashrus. Call them some kashrus v'yochol. And it could be that in one detail he's suspect because this thing is lenient in his eyes. And everything else is muksa b'kashrus. And evidence for this, we find Kohanim was suspect to deliberately blemish their b'choros. Therefore not believe they have credibility to say that this Mu'um happened on its own. Okay, no matter the call Kohanim, well, if that's the case. Let's say all the Kohanim are not called Muksa B'Kashrus. So to which mean everything. And then that practically had a carbon checked by a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash. There's absolute B'choros that something is choshen on something. The Mizem Mavur, the Ein B'choshen, Rashan Leknos. From this we see is not choshen, you're allowed to buy from him. About Jews who soon be kosher Jews. In one respect, he's suspect. But that person you don't recognize, you know at all. That person, like the Rambam says, you don't purchase from him. He's a guy who should serve Musa Bakashos. Therefore, according to this, all things which require Musa Bakashos, ain't a command of tzaddik v'chasid yirei lukim yirabim. Doesn't mean a tzaddik or a chasid or a person who's superior to Yisrael Shemayim. No, it's not Kedas Yisrael. According to the Jewish religion, which goes after. There's no difference between the Rambam and the Rashi and the Ravid, according to the Halacha, unless except for a person we don't recognize at all. According to the Rambam, you can't buy from him. According to the other Rishonim, it seems like you can. But anybody recognize if he conducts himself according to our religion, Rambam will tell you Rambam allowed to buy for him. Make a mitzvah sisurim is lenient. My mitzvah sisurim shita shulchashon. It's obviously the suspect. Rashi Rabbit also below 8 is according to Rashi Rabbit. Also, you can't buy for him without testimony of some sort. Well, I don't know. That's not precise. What the Arukh HaShulchan is saying that I guess it will make him a mitzvah. No, he is precise. Make a mitzvah sisurim across the board, not in one prat, across the board. It's clear from the Rambam writes that somebody who's a guest by a Bais, so keep him even though you don't recognize him. We know he's a Jew. So it's not enough to know he's a Jew in order to buy from him. To be a guest by him, interestingly, as long as you know he's a Jew, he's okay. But to buy from him, you have to know he conducts himself Jewishly. But lo yaser, not more than that. So, interesting, difference in levels. To eat by him, as long as you know he's a Jew. To buy from him, you have to know he also conducts himself as a Jew. It's still, if he's choshen on mitzvah, you saw him, then of course you need some testimony that whatever he's selling is okay. This has nothing to do with it's to do with purchasing stuff. It's nothing to do with the halachas of shchita and checking the lungs and trabeling the meat. You have to know that somebody's an expert for those purposes. So you have to check them out, test them. Because here there's no skill or craft, only credibility. But you need a skill and a craft and you say more than just normal person normally possess. Yerushalayim Brura need clear Yerushalayim. Can ain't Sham Heter b'diavad b'tam that must be certain. Therefore, there's no b'diavad leniency because It has credibility. If there is leniency, it's account the fact of the premise that most people shech are mumchim. Most people who are involved in shchita and with trabeling are mumchim. So the evidence stands from that rove, not from any other type of assumption of credibility, because credibility will not count in and of itself. The can't rely on rove between shchita. It says in the brackets here, which can't understand unless you look inside. Yud Gimel, Kasser Avin Ramah, obviously based. Ramah writes over Aver, when somebody who commits sins because they have an appetite for it, when we not called a suspect. This is astonishing. The body called Chashu Rak anybody a suspect, it's only because of appetite of desires. That's it's not Chashu anything else. The Chashu Achis, if he's a suspect, do something to anger Kodesh Baruch Hu, in other words, because he wants to just rebel. Obviously, he's not believing in anything. He's a heretic. Even though he only did one time, did something to spite. It's like a non-Jew. The Taz was astonished when Ramon rejected what he said. Bush also left this out. The source of the Rashba, the Chubas, what this about testifying about other people. Because of Lucy Simasim Zain, Ein Sham. It's about famous Hadishmai. We'll explain this later on. Maybe it's credibility in somebody else, but not on his own stuff. I feel like it's slow even to eat by him. Of course, not to for him to sell to you. Yes, those who try to find a way to explain the parish, the Myre, the Indian Lechol, that's all we're talking about eating by him. So when we know that in his house is Heter and Isser, came to Rak Te'avan, since it's only a movement of Te'avan, Lo Shabbat Geter Bachli Surah, even though he has Heter, Isser home, he won't forsake that. It's mutter to eat, which is also. Mutter B'chai Lechol, so you can eat by him under those circumstances. That's the Pre-Chodesh. The dog who it's very difficult to say this. How can you rely on this? Lion Heter told me a Keser. Maybe the Heter he has in the house is not as good as the Isser. To allow to eat by such a person, if a person who's eating does not know clearly, this food is definitely kosher. Okay, also language of the does not seem to indicate this. Writes he's not called suspect. It's not like he's totally like a kosher Jew. The bracket also writes something which is can't understand, which without looking inside, that the shach is astonishing. You doubt. Near I need to come on a chesed. So the more must mean something else. Happy much because I'm left, see when basic. But to be over a very mikra, so he gets a sin by accident. Pamach seven once for desire. Avagav days and nifsa latest, even though by this he makes a puzzle latest, which was have which causes Chashimishon receiving rage Lamadam, we come answer with the Kasaki. Nevertheless, you don't have to check his knife. Below Mikre Avaryon, he's not called a sinner. Because we are Sham, some Sifidal and Sham. But Shomer Kamakan. So that's what it means here. Don't make it Choshed, but over Aver Theom Mikre. If he by accident wants to commit a sin out of desire, he's not called a Mumar L'Te'avon. Choshed Mikre Raksha Rogil Avor Zeh. He's not called Choshed if he's deliberately or habitually. Let's over this. Kileach saw that clearly this Isser is light in his eyes. That which is the Yitzhar seized him by accident or by coincidence. Mikri obviously does not mean accident. It means it happened on a rare occasion. That's not called a kosher. Even according to opinion that requires checking his knife, it can become kosher mikri. Might want to check his knife, but he's not considered to be suspect. It's just like checking a knife, which requires a great deal of effort and involvement. That they didn't believe him for. Nevertheless, they don't call him somebody who's suspect. You'll see, like it says, somebody doesn't sin occasionally. Arukh HaShulchan, as opposed to somebody who's to be suspect, that's when you constantly do it. without crying out, something which happened on occasion. That seems to be a logical, very logical interpretation of what the Ramon means to say.